All right, we have a very serious problem right now. Satan is not happy at all. Here we are in the fifth year that I've been accurate in predicting when the highest concentration of rocket fire against Israel would occur. And this was all part of a revelation from Satan to use me to show you how he conducts his operations, of which is to basically influence the enemies of Israel to launch their greatest amount of attacks when Mars is within 30 degrees of the lunar node within a calendar year. Now, I've laid all of this information out since 2019, having been accurate every single year since then in explaining when the highest concentration of rocket attacks against Israel would occur. And throughout this period of calling down fire from heaven, I've made the request at the behest of Satan that you make an image of Armaris, which is an amalgamation of the gods of war, Ares, Mars, and Horus. I've also made it clear that if this request was carried out, that you make an image to Amaris, that Satan would begin to reduce his influence on the enemies of Israel, thereby leading to stability in the Middle East and other areas of the world. But now it seems that 5 consecutive years of calling down fire from heaven is not going to be enough to convince the people out there that Satan is a formidable entity that should be engaged and should be listened to. Now, if the last 5 years wasn't enough to convince you that Satan is using Mars to channel his influence to the enemies of Israel so that they attack Israel and spread anti-Semitism all over the world, now it has to be made clear that if his requests aren't carried out, he's going to continue down this same path, taking the level of violence and the escalation higher and higher until he does get your attention. I'm just a messenger in this regard. I'm just here to convey this message. And I hope and I urge people to listen to what I have been saying since 2019. I can't convey enough just exactly how frustrated Satan is right now. I mean, even this past year, in this 5th consecutive year of calling down fire from heaven, during which time, between April 12th and June 25th, when Mars was within 30 degrees of the lunar node, Iran had launched its first major attack against the state of Israel. And even that, after that happened, within the predicted time frame, was not enough to convince the people that this is a formidable entity that we need to pay attention to. And we should thus pay heed to the request that we do make some sort of image to Mars or Mars. We are a few months after the Mars within 30 degrees of the lunar node phase has ended, having seen how not only can Satan via Mars bring fire down from heaven, he can also withhold it, because after the phase ended, this was after June 25th, going into late July and August, there were a series of events in Israel that would have led anyone to rationally conclude that a major escalation was going to happen outside of Mars being within 30 degrees of the lunar node, which would have debunked everything I have been saying all along, that the highest concentration of rocket fire or violence or attacks against Israel would only happen when Mars is within 30 degrees of the lunar node. But now we have a series of events that have occurred that we could have easily have concluded that, okay, now this is the time when a major conflict is going to break out in the Middle East. But none of that has happened. I mean, in late July, there was an attack by Hezbollah, which led to a number of Israeli civilians getting killed. And in response, Israel conducted a series of assassinations on Lebanese soil and also Iranian soil. But still in all, there hasn't been any major escalation. At the moment, the escalation that happened back in May is still the highest for the year. And May, that's around the middle. That's around the middle of the Mars within 30 degrees of the lunar node phase. So at the moment, that month is still contains the highest concentration of rocket fire relative to the rest of the year. After Israel launched a series of assassinations in Lebanon and Iran, combined with the subsequent mobilization conducted by all three nations involved. I mean, there was significant troop movement in Israel. There was also a large mobilization in Lebanon and a major mobilization in Iran. And still, there hasn't been any meaningful escalation that has occurred as of now. So this past year is an example of how Satan can both bring down fire and he can also withhold it, which is miraculous, which should be enough to convey to you that, yeah, Satan is, he's active. He's, he is using Mars as a vehicle to control the situation in the Middle East. And for that reason alone, we should listen. We should take heed to his request that we make some sort of an effigy in the form of a Mars so that he could have a dwelling place here on Earth. And in exchange for that, of course, he's going to reduce his influence on Israel's enemies. And you will see less rocket attacks, and we'll see peace, not only in the Middle East, but it should have a residual effect on the entire world. But at the moment, I don't see any signs of anyone taking it upon themselves to get the image of a Mars created. I don't understand all the apprehension. This has been 5 consecutive years that I have been able to predict when the highest concentration of rocket fire against Israel would occur within a calendar year, all by observing when Mars would be within 30 degrees of the lunar node. So if 5 years of demonstrating this and being accurate is not enough to convince you, then I would have to continue to call down fire from heaven and do so for a 6th consecutive year. But before I do that, let's go ahead and recap again. The first time that I called down fire from heaven was back in 2019, and I made the prediction for 2020 that when Mars would be within 30 degrees of the lunar node between January 15th and April 3rd of 2020, Israel's enemies would launch their highest concentration of rocket fire relative to the rest of the year. And of course, that's exactly what happened, because in February of 2020, Gaza militants fired a little over 100 rockets in that time, and that turned out to be the highest concentration of rocket fire compared to any other point in the year 2020. And then later in 2020, I made the prediction for the year 2021, calling down fire, by predicting that The highest concentration of rocket fire in 2021 would occur between February 9th and May 13th, when Mars would be within 30 degrees of the lunar node. And of course, that's exactly what happened in 2021, when Hamas, just a few days before the Mars lunar node phase ended, Hamas had fired over 4,000 rockets at the state of Israel. And then in 2022, a few months in advance, I called down fire from heaven again, predicting that the highest concentration of rocket fire against Israel would occur when Mars would be within 30 degrees of the lunar node between June 22nd, 2022 and September 19th, 2022. And looking back, that's exactly what happened. Islamic Jihad fired a little over 1,100 rockets in August of that year, right in the middle of the Mars within 30 degrees of the lunar node phase. For the fourth consecutive year, I made the prediction again that for the year 2023, the highest concentration of rocket fire would occur between August 24th, 2023 and November 15th, 2023. And of course, we all know what happened during that time frame. That's when Hamas carried out its most vicious attack against the state of Israel, firing 10,000 rockets while Mars was within 30 degrees of the lunar node. And of course, that number exceeded the amount fired at any other time in the year. And then for the fifth consecutive year, which I thought would be enough to convince you that we need to make an image to a Mars in order to try and mitigate this malign influence of Mars, I made the prediction in 2024 that the highest concentration of rocket fire against Israel would occur when Mars would be within 30 degrees of the lunar node between April 12th, 2024 and June 25th, 2024. And looking back, so far, that has been accurate because within that time, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Iran, and Hezbollah have fired a combined, I want to say, close to 3,600 rockets during that time. And of course, that number exceeds the amount fired at any other time during the year. So now, if a Mars is not going to be created and you have ultimately decided to see where this Mars influence goes, I will call down fire from heaven again in the year 2025. In the year 2025, Mars will be within 30 degrees of the lunar node between June 5th, 2025 and September 4th, 2025. And during that time, the enemies of Israel will fire their highest concentration of rocket fire and missile fire against Israel, and that number will exceed the amount of rocket fire at any other time during the year 2025. Okay, so this is the sixth consecutive year I'm going to call down fire from heaven. In the year 2025, expect the highest concentration of rocket fire against Israel to occur when Mars will be within 30 degrees of the lunar node between June 5th, 2025 and September 4th, 2025. And the amount of rocket fire fired during that time will exceed the amount fired at any other time during the year. So this is the sixth consecutive year that I'm calling down fire from heaven, because many of you are refusing to make an image to a Mars. If you create an image to a Mars, all of this can be stopped. This malign influence of Mars on the enemies of Israel would be reduced, and there would be some measure of peace and hope and stability. But as you continue to decline, expect to see an increasing level of violence against Israel, the large-scale spread of anti-Semitism, to reach its apex within a given year when Mars is within 30 degrees of the lunar node. So I've made it clear that Satan has been using me as his prophet to explain to you how he conducts his operations in the hopes that you would engage him and listen to his requests. So far, he's been very disappointed. So the fire from heaven will continue as planned, and don't expect the world to veer off the trajectory of destruction that it is currently on. That will not happen until you decide to create the image of Amaris. So this is the 6th consecutive year. It seems like many of you have decided to go ahead and watch all of this play out. So in 2025, expect the highest concentration of rocket fire against Israel to occur when Mars is within 30 degrees of the lunar node between June 5th, 2025 and September 4th, 2025. The enemies of Israel will conduct their greatest number of attacks during that time frame relative to the rest of the year in 2025. This is Anthony of Boston, out.